The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the Silver State. I'm at the Broken Skull Ranch 2.0 out here in Nevada, and I've been out here for a couple of weeks now and really been enjoying my stay. The temperature has really cooled off and dropped down. Hell, it's usually about 12 or 15 degrees in the mornings, and man, I tell you what, when the sun goes down behind those mountains, man, all of a sudden there's a temperature drop of about 15 degrees, although it is still broad daylight. So it's been fun. It's been a really good time. Had a great time on my mule deer hunt. Obviously, like I said, didn't get anything, but we're heading back to the main streets of Los Angeles on Wednesday and getting back to the grind. Hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to some of the people, the WWE superstars that are coming through town, book a couple of podcasts, knock some down, and shoot the breeze with some of the cats that out there on the road. And it's going to be interesting going back to Los Angeles because I've been watching from afar all the devastation from the fires that are in the Thousand Oaks, Malibu area. They've evacuated Calabasas. Man, just lots of devastation, destruction. So many people have lost lives, lost their homes, lost everything. So, man, it is a crazy situation over there as long as I've lived there. And I used to live in Malibu, and I don't know that the home we used to live in is still there, but I never thought, all that area would be in harm's way from a fire. And boy, I tell you what, it is hard to watch. I feel for them people out there. And, man, if you're told to evacuate, man, please get your ass out of there. My thoughts are with everybody that lost loved ones and lost everything they had, man. That's a bad deal. I guess, man, no matter where you're at, whether it's East Coast or down there south in the Gulf Coast region, man, we get the hurricanes and tornadoes. Out there on the West Coast, man, we got earthquakes and fires. No matter where you're at, in the Midwest, I mean, that's all that Tornado Alley stuff. I mean, it just doesn't seem wherever you live, something's going to get you. So if you've been told to evacuate, hopefully you got out, and wish everybody all the best in these dire circumstances, situations, man. That's a shits. But nonetheless, man, I've been having a nice time out here in Nevada. It's good to get out of the city. It's good to breathe some fresh air. I've been able to ride my four-wheelers and my buggies, and been able to go on that wonderful mule deer hunt, and I didn't get anything, but man, I had a good time being out in the middle of nowhere. Callie and Mula absolutely love it out here just because the facility or the yard is a hell of a lot bigger than our little ass yard in Los Angeles, and these dogs get a shit pile more exercise than they normally get. So they're pretty happy. Callie's over here in the command center here with me. Go to sleep, Callie. Before I get to my guest today, and my guest today is Dr. Tom Prichard. I'm going to give you a little history on my relationship with Dr. Tom Prichard here in a second. I'm going to cover subject matter here real briefly, and I'll cover it on my Thursday Open extensively so I can use all the language I want. But man, I tell you what, I was talking on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about, my eating program, working out, and eliminating alcohol from my diet. And man, I just said it just like it was. I was on a diet because what happens is a lot of times I'll get in shape and then I'll get out of shape. So it's kind of a cycle, a yo-yo, if you will. And all of a sudden I just said, hey, I stopped drinking for a little bit to get my diet under control. So I'm going to go into more specifics of that, but it got picked up as clickbait. Everybody from around the world said, hey, Steve Austin got sober. People are writing me, congratulations on my sobriety. I traded alcohol for medicinal marijuana. What was some of the other ones? Well, I am doing DDP yoga, and that's working gangbusters, and so that was great. But I never, ever said I was giving up alcohol permanently. I never, ever said I was turning to medicinal marijuana in place of alcohol. I don't smoke dope. I stated that clearly. It was a story about a truck stop in West Texas. Anyway, it got all spun out of control. So, hey, yeah, did I quit drinking temporarily? Yeah, I did. Because when you're on a diet, and if your diet is 2,700 calories, let's call it 300 grams of protein, 160 to 180 grams of carbs, and 60 grams of fat, you're roughly going to be at 2,700 calories. So if that's your caloric limit, which is going to put you at a deficit and able to burn fat, there's no place for alcohol. What are you going to do? Take out 150 grams of protein or 150 grams of carbs and say, here's where the booze goes. It doesn't work like that. because alcohol always jumps to the front of the line because the body treats it as a poison. So you no longer burn fat. You're burning the alcohol acetate out of your system. And then it's a relentless cycle that goes over and over and over until you get off the booze. So I hate getting taken out of context. I hate being misquoted. Sometimes I'll make a comment about, my thoughts on the WWE. And all of a sudden they'll say, Stone Cold bashes this, that, or whatever. No, all I made was an observation, a statement. There's a few things I know about in this world. One of them is pro wrestling. I'm not bashing anything. I could bash anything I want, but I'm not bashing anything WWE related. Those are merely observations. So anyway, this whole thing got taken way out of context, got blown way out of proportion all over the world, and I just could not believe it. And a lot of people say, hey, man, Steve, congratulations on getting sober. I've been there. Yeah, man, I drank a lot of whiskey, vodka, and beer and bullshit myself. And I'm not quitting booze permanently. I'm just trying to drop a few lbs to go watch my niece graduate from college. Pretty damn simple story. Anyway, get into this more and more on the Thursday podcast. But my guest today, without any further ado, is a longtime friend of mine, Dr. Tom Prichard. And the history between myself and Dr. Tom Prichard goes way back to about 1990 in Nashville, Tennessee, in the USWA territory. Tom and I ended up staying at the Congress Inn on Dickerson Pike in Nashville, Tennessee. Tom had his own car. He was borrowing Dirty White Boy's 1978 Toyota Tercel. I had my own car, 1988 Hyundai Excel. $154 a month on those payments. Barely could pay that car off. Wasn't making any money. Dutch Mantell the Booker and Chris Champion, who is no longer with us, were my riding partners. At some point, something happened, and me and Dr. Tom Prichard were forced to ride together. The first few rides together were very awkward and very silent because we didn't know each other. And Tom was in a different place, and I was in a different place. But there we were together in the same place. Eventually, the ice was broken, and we became, dare I say, very good friends. And Tom was a guy, whenever I asked him a question, he always had a very logical answer and a very easy way of just breaking down what was happening, telling me what I was doing right, wrong, how, when, what, where to do things. And he really was one of the mentors in my early wrestling career. And I've always thanked him for being so generous with his time and his observations and his wrestling IQ. We started riding together and we rode together for a long time. And then one time, and we don't cover this in the podcast, but one time we're riding down the road and Tom says to me, hey, because I had no way of knowing. I had no contact with the WCW offices. But he goes, hey, I guess he was in touch with either Dusty or he's in touch with Magnum TA. And he says, hey, these guys are showing some interest in you. You need to give Dusty a call. So I gave Dusty a call. They offered me a job. I went down to Atlanta, met with Dusty Rhodes, the man himself, the American Dream, a man that I have always looked up to, and he offered me a job, and I took it there on the spot. Hell, if it hadn't been for Tom, I would have never known that they were interested in me. So I went over to WCW, and Tom went about his business, and we would cross paths again in the WWF when he got up there, when I got up there together. But through all these years, and we see each other from time to time, but I'm out on the West Coast, he's down there in Tennessee, but we see each other every now and then, and it's always good to see someone who is so influential and so helpful for you in your career. And so the first hour of this podcast, I talked to Tom, Dr. Tom Prichard, for about an hour and 40 minutes. On this podcast, we're going to talk for about an hour, and then I'm going to stop it. And then on Thursday, we're going to pick up the second half of the podcast, which is about 40 minutes in length. And I'll answer some Q&A questions to take up the rest of the time. We'll play the remainder of that interview first, and then I'll get into some Q&A because I want to make sure the spotlight is shined on Dr. Tom Prichard. And one of the biggest reasons he came on the show, it was great to talk to him. It was great to catch up with him. But he came on the show so he could promote his wrestling school that they are starting up in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so even though you won't hear about the wrestling school in this hour, you will hear about it in the Thursday show. But I want to drop the information right now because if you're interested in a career in professional wrestling / sports entertainment, there's only a few guys out there that I would recommend as far as training goes. And I get asked this all the time. And if Dr. Tom Prichard and Glenn Jacobs, Kane are going to start up a wrestling school. I highly, highly recommend, if you are interested in a career in the squared circle, and if you're in the Knoxville area or a couple of 100 miles from Knoxville or hell, anywhere in the United States, this is going to be an awesome place to learn the business, because Tom has a way. And if Glenn Jacobs is involved, Kane, then he has a wealth of information. Jesus Christ, that guy has been around forever at the top level. So let me read this. The open house for this wrestling school is going to be at D1 Sports in Knoxville, January 3rd at 7 p.m. That's D1 Sports in Knoxville, January 3rd at 7 p.m. The first class will be January 7th. All of the information for the school is available on this website, jpwrestlingacademy.com. jpwrestlingacademy.com. Hey, man, what they're going to do, and we're going to talk about this on the second hour, but I'm going to drop it for you here. You'll be working out 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, 1 hour of strength conditioning, 3 hours of training. Let me tell you something. When I learned how to work in the Gentleman Chris Adams Wrestling School, we worked out 1 day a week, Saturday, after the television taping, maybe 2 hours. It might have been 3. I was splitting the ring with 25, 30 other cats and 2 instructors 1 time a week for 2 to 3 hours. This is 5 times a week, 4 hours a day. That's 20 hours in a week compared to my 2 to 3. And that wasn't even solid ring time. So you're going to get a wealth of information from 2 very savvy veterans who know how to manage the system, navigate the system, tell a story, get over, create a character, work, mechanics, psychology, the whole thing, everything you need to know. So anyway, it was great catching up with Tom. I wish I could have talked to him one-on-one in person. I'm trying to get away from Skype interviews, but sometimes, you just got to do what you got to do. And I wanted to help Tom out and promote a school, and I wanted to talk to him because he is a guy that's very easy to talk to. But this is going to be an outstanding place if you want to learn about the business. And I am headed back to Los Angeles in a couple of days. Make sure you stay in tune. As I do my close to the show, I'm going to tell you about this wrestling school again. On Thursday, we're going to get into the school. We're going to tell a few more stories, but I want to make sure I drop all the 411. I'm going to take care of this podcast, get out there, do some work, and get out there in the great outdoors. I love it out here in Nevada. And once again, my thoughts are with everybody being devastated by the California wildfires. I'll be back in town on Wednesday. It will be interesting to see the mood and the smoke and all of the calamity that's going on in that city. And I don't mean that in a good way. I just mean that as a curious way, because I've been out there for damn near 15 years, and I consider Texas my home. But Cali has been good to me, and I wish everybody all the best. Let's get into Dr. Tom Prichard and tell some old wrestling stories right now.
Hey, this is Adam Carolla from The Adam Carolla Show. Bet Online continues to be your #1 source for all your football betting action. Bet Online has more ways to get in and stay in on action, with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From every NFL and college game to MLB, UFC, and NHL, futures as well. BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. Head to the website today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. In between games, head over to BetOnline's casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline. The game starts here.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
Man, I was doing some research before we started talking, and I'm talking to Dr. Tom Prichard. I covered this on the open of the show, Tom, but anyway, I was reading some of the Wikipedia stuff so I can just get some basic facts, because I forgot half the stuff I did, and especially a lot of the times way back in the day in the USWA. Hell, that was back in 89, 90, 91.
If you were looking at Wikipedia, I can tell you half that stuff is.
Oh, yeah, here's what I was trying to remember. We started a heel faction. I guess it was myself, you, and was it Eric Embry? I didn't know I was in a heel faction. I thought it was just kind of like a solo act, and every now and then I would do a six-man with Dutch, and he would rib me and tell me to go pick up Soul Taker and slam him, but I don't ever remember being in a faction. Were we a faction?
I don't recall that either, except I think it was the Texas guys versus the Tennessee guys back then, so I don't know that it was never necessarily called anything but the Texas bunch or whatever it was. I don't remember the name either, man. I mean, I got to tell you, I've seen some pictures and I've seen some matches that I couldn't remember. I mean, the same thing. I just thought, holy Christ, I didn't remember that at all. And people told me I worked with, and I can't even tell you who it was now. So I never had a match, and they pulled it up and actually showed it to me, and I went, holy Christ. But that was about par for the course.
Hey, were you a part of that bloodbath we had in the Sportatorium one night? We always worked the Sportatorium on Friday night, and then we got on the bus and drove back to do Memphis live TV on Saturday morning. And I guess Eric Embry had the book, and I think it was like 5 people on each side. It was Texas versus Tennessee, and the handcuffs got busted out, and all of the baby faces were bleeding like stuck pigs. We was handcuffed to the ropes. Anytime you break out handcuffs in a match, most of the time bad shit is going to happen. I think it was probably my first or second blade job. I forget who told me. I think Chris or somebody told me how to make a damn blade. Were you a part of that match?
I don't think so, man. I mean, once again, I might have been, because if Eric was booking and it was going on during that time, I was part of that Texas deal. But I don't remember we did so many bloodbaths, you know. I mean, we were cutting every night, seemed like, you know, or every other night at least. So I might have been, but I couldn't. I mean, I really can't remember either. You know, you're talking about getting hit with the head with the chair. Yeah, I hit myself in the head a few times, you know, with a blunt. So, yeah.
So I want to get to the history of how Tom and I met here in just a minute in the podcast. But I was doing some research on you, and I've known you forever, and you were very instrumental in my career in helping me learn a lot of stuff. And there were so many great guys on that USWA crew in Tennessee that helped me out as well. I'm laughing because I'm trying to kind of halfway prepare some notes and have some questions, even though I've known you so well for so long. So I watched your interview for 2015 with Hannibal from Great North Wrestling. And, of course, he always does a very in-depth, a lot of research interview. So I just threw away half my damn notes because half the question I was going to ask you was some of the stuff he asked you. So go to YouTube and watch that interview with Tom Prichard. There's some great 411 on it. But he asked you a question about the blade, Tom, and you said, you know, in today's day and age, I mean, you just really can't use it that much, if any. And, you know, booking yourself into, you know, cage matches, gimmick matches and stuff, matches where you bleed just because, I don't know, whether it's the political landscape or the time period we're in now. But going back, I don't want to discuss that with you, but I do want to discuss when you and me first started kind of hanging out, or when I first came to the territory. Maybe you were already there or you had come in from somewhere, but I just remember you being in a feud. I don't know if it was Jarrett, Dundee, Lawler, who it was you were feuding with. But, dude, going back to the blade, you had an open wound on your forehead. And it was every night, because it was the same old towns every single night of the week. You know the schedule. And then towards the end, I mean, dude, we started riding together, and you just had this, it looked like damn near a maxi pad stuck on your forehead.
Yeah,
and you didn't even need a blade at that point to get color. I mean, all of a sudden, your Band-Aid would come off from the match, and it was a big-ass Band-Aid, and basically your opponent could just thump you with his finger, or it would just start bleeding. But, dude, I remember that open wound because it seemed like it lasted for months. When you think about not really, you know, being able to do color these days, but how the territory thrived on blood back in the old days. Do you remember that time?
You know what? I do remember that time, and I remember hearing a story a long time ago about Danny McShane making the blade famous and being known. I don't know if he invented it, but he was one of the guys they attributed to using a lot. And then in Tennessee, man, it all started when those guys started doing hard ways against each other. And nowadays you have MMA and all this other stuff that people can watch and see guys actually get punched in the face for real. And that's what my dad always told me when we were watching these matches. He said, how can you get punched in the face 5 times in a row and there's no mark, there's no blood, there's nothing. So in Tennessee, I think that was part of the lure, because they knew, boy, if we go down to the wrestling match, there's going to be some blood now, Mom. I mean, that's kind of what it was. Same thing in Texas, man. We grew up on the same wrestling in Texas, and it was a lot of blood and guts. But once you're right, man. And once we got to Tennessee and we started in Memphis, and if you gigged Monday night, you're probably going to gig Tuesday night, or if you did good enough Monday night, he wouldn't have to just thump you, like you said. But I remember those times too. And looking back on them, Steve, if you really think about it now, and maybe this is the way to think about it, I don't know. But how insane or crazy do you have to be to actually go in there and do that? And then you think back and it just kind of trickles down. How insane and crazy do you have to be to do that for $40 a night? And how insane and crazy do you have to be to stay at a place like the Congress Inn? How insane and crazy? Well, it just comes out to it that you're insane and crazy for being in the business back then. It was a lot of crazy, insane stuff going on with a lot of crazy, insane people. And I don't think that could go on today because of the way the world is and the way things are. But a perfect example of using the blade the correct way, the right way, and nobody could know how this could end up, is when Brett had you in the sharpshooter and all of a sudden that blood comes trickling down. There was no way to frame that. It was just, that's the way it was supposed to be, and that's the way it ended. So, that was the correct way of using a blade instead of doing it every night.
You get in the wrestling business, hell, I don't know what your perspective was. You're going to give it to me because I'm going to ask you. Man, I just fell in love with wrestling. Been watching since I was 7 or 8 years old. I was watching, my mom was reading her Red Book magazine. I was watching Houston wrestling. I think it was Dusty. I think he's bleeding like a stuck pig in the middle of the ring. They just had that rope banister, Smoky, Sam Houston Coliseum. And the security guard was walking around. He had a pistol sidearm on his hip. Yeah. And he'd just beating the dog shit out of Dusty. And Dusty was bleeding. I looked over at my mom and I said, man, Mom, why don't that security guard help Dusty? Because I figured, hell, he's getting the hell beat out of him. He's bleeding like a stuck pig. At least the security guard could, go help a brother out. Yeah. So she rolled her eyes and maybe it wasn't Dusty, but that's in my memory that it was Dusty. Going back to the blade. So finally, after all those years, I just wanted to be a pro wrestler. And then all of a sudden, you get that call, or not that call, you're talking with the bookers that, hey, we need you to get a little color tonight. Well, if you're a virgin and you ain't never got no color, well, how do you do that? Because they don't teach you that in wrestling school. Or at least Chris Adams didn't teach me that, and you learned from the Iron Sheik, and I'm guessing he didn't teach you that. But all of a sudden you go in there and you make your first hatchet and you pull it and you do it. But, dude, whether it was the first time or the last time, it's just, when you think about it, it's kind of sickening. But it's kind of like a rite of passage, and you're proud to do it. And you don't even think about the health ramifications back in the, this is late 80s, into the mid-90s, into the 2000s. And when you and I were down there between 90 and 91, 92, but when you first stick that point into your skin, it just kind of pops and cracks a little bit. And then you drag it, hopefully horizontally. Some people did the vertical drag. I was taught to go with the grain. But, dude, it's a weird feeling. And all of a sudden you just think, hey, this is what it's like to be a pro wrestler. This is what you're supposed to do. So you don't think anything of it. Now, when I look back, because you hear about all these people that like cutting and, just cut themselves for the hell of it. I understand that's a serious problem with some people who do things to themselves, but dude, how wicked is that when you think about just the aspect of show business, and instead of doing it the hard way, to bust out a blade, cut yourself open, it's pretty damn insane.
Well, I got to tell you, see, the appeal of this business, every part of it, the dirt, the grime, the grit, the bright lights, the dim lights, the sportatoriums, the high school gyms, the arenas, the coliseums, all of that just kind of encompass this certain group of people and gypsy lifestyle, that mystique that went along with, how do these people exist on a daily basis? I mean, and how could the referee be that stupid when they get run-ins almost every week, or the guy cheats and finds something in his trunks, and then all of a sudden they're busting each other open and there's real blood. And then when you get into the business, you find out how the blood's produced. I kind of thought like you did, except I said, man, this has got to be the coolest shit, because nobody else in their right mind would do it. So you're swimming in this in this pool of insanity with these guys. That's how I was thinking of it. And that's, I grew up training with Mark Lewin in the gym in Houston. At 16 years old, I met Mark in the gym. Well, he was only wrestling in Houston. I kind of got indoctrinated to the wrestler's lifestyle of the 70s, and it was like, whoa, because Mark's a heavy guy. Have you ever had the opportunity to meet Mark?
No, I've never met the guy. Obviously, when he was Purple Haze or whatever, right. I followed, Maniac Mark Lewin, all of his different incarnations. But just listen to the guy talk. I mean this with respect. He seems like a guy, and of his tales, I know him and Gary Hart were very close, that's pretty far out there.
Yeah, Mark was way far out there, and when I met Kevin Sullivan, he and Mark were very good friends too, so that we had that commonality as well. And just thinking about the rituals back then, and thinking about the way the blood was got, and thinking about making a blade for yourself to slash. And some guys, I used to watch Abdullah the Butcher. He would make trips to Houston and in the ring, and you just knew it was a bloodbath, and he would cover the ring with blood and cover people that got close to him with blood. And I just thought, to be as sick as and as twisted as this sounds, but to be a part of that group of individuals that would drive all night and go to some town, and some people were crazy, some people want to attack them, and then go to the next town. And do these insane things, do these crazy things, with these weird characters. You had the Infernos with a loaded boot, and their manager J.C. Dykes at ringside would have a flashlight to give them signals, and then the fans would bring flashlights to give them signals, and then they'd get confused and mess up the spots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how insane was that? But how ingenious was that, too?
Dude, what got you hooked on the wrestling business? Because you grew up 100 miles from me. I guess born in Pasadena, but you grew up in Houston.
Well, no, I was actually born in El Paso. So we were born in West Texas.
Were you?
Yeah, we got the funks, man, in West Texas. And I got to tell you, those are the guys I watched growing up, was Terry Dory and Dory Sr. and Mike DiBiase. Murdoch was just starting. My God, the Infernos, J.C. Dykes and the Infernos, Saul Weingroff and the Von Brauners. And think about this. This was in the early 1960s, and World War II, I guess, had been over 20 years by then, but it was still a lot of heavy feelings. You had Saul Weingroff, a Jewish gentleman, managing two Nazis in 1960s, in the mid-60s, late 60s. And I didn't understand that then, but looking back on it, I thought, my God, what heat those guys had. And I didn't realize that, there was just not just the wrestling heat, they had real heat. So, but that got me hooked. Just seeing the villains, the baby faces, you could go out there and these guys did anything they wanted, and it just looked. It was that attraction, if you dig it or not. And that was just something that came out.
When did you end up in Houston? Because I thought you grew up there. Man, when you're growing up with a background of funks and everybody else, man, that's heavy-duty, Hall of Fame type stuff.
Yeah.
And so much history. When did you get to Houston and start watching Houston wrestling with Paul Boesch?
Well, my dad got a new job in Houston in it was late 69. It was right after Dory Funk. Dory Funk just won the belt February, so I guess we went out the summer of 1969 to Houston, and just happened to be turning the channels and saw in the paper it was Houston wrestling on Saturday nights. We had Johnny Valentine, Wahoo McDaniel, and the great Malenko, Bull Curry, those kind of guys, and we just saw this huge building on TV in El Paso. They just taped in a studio, and that was still cool. But now we're watching this on on the screen, and it's a huge arena, and they had the live matches on Friday night, and they showed it back on Saturday night and Sunday morning. So, that's when we found Paul. And we found all the Gary Hart was there at that time too. I remember that, and the Moon Man. I mean, there's a great story about him too, if you know anything about Texas wrestling. But that was, thank God. Real quick story. I don't know if I can make it quick or not. When we were about to leave El Paso, Grizzly Smith had just come into the territory. Grizz's gimmick was you could not hurt his stomach. And he got on the promo interview with Nick Roberts, and he said, I don't care if you get a 15-foot ladder, you can't hurt my stomach. And guess who came out? Harley Race came out the next week and said, hey, I got my ladder out here, Smith. Why don't you come out here and show me you're not a coward? So Grizzly came out after the break, laid down on the mat. Harley set his ladder up, had two guys holding it on each side, and he gets up into the ring lights. And Nick Roberts asked everybody in the studio for complete silence so he can concentrate. And Harley comes off that ladder with his knee right across Grizz's neck. And, man, everybody's upset and booing. And Harley comes over to Nick Roberts and says, yeah, there's your coward in the ring right there. And he walks off. And Nick Roberts calls for an ambulance. Not an ambulance, but we need an ambulance, ladies and gentlemen. Please, we need an ambulance. Seriously, call. They get the ambulance. They roll up the door. The TV studio. Grizz has his tongue hanging out. Man, they don't know what's going to happen. He could be seriously injured. His larynx is crushed. Oh, my God, what's going to happen? Well, we got to leave and go to Houston. This lady is going to send me all the cards and the results that were still in the paper. Just tell me what's going on. So we get to Houston. The new guys are Wahoo and Valentine and all this other stuff. And we were there about 5 weeks, I guess, 2 months or about a month. And we hear on the TV and we see in the newspaper, it says, coming back for revenge for Johnny Valentine, coming off the second rope across his neck is Grizzly Smith next week. They'll extract revenge and all this other stuff. So they have the match and Grizz goes over. Well, at the same time, he's coming back for revenge on Harley in El Paso in that West Texas area too. So I kind of got the idea that and I told Harley this later on too. I says, you're responsible for smarting me up for the business because you guys did the angle in El Paso and Johnny Valentine did the angle with him in Houston. And I told Grizz about that. And Grizz says, yeah, I had a 6-week trip to Japan, so we did the angle both places. You could do that back then, but now with the internet and everybody knowing everything, there was no way. But that's the way business was done, man. You could do something in one town and not expect anybody to know about.
So you got smartened up pretty quick then.
I thought so, man, yeah. Man, in Texas, they work tight. They work solid. And some of them work stiff, but I mean, Wahoo and Johnny, they would beat the hell out of each other, but it was just so great. Different style of match, but the timing was there. And you believed it because they believed it.
Dude, how did you get to work with Paul Boesch? Because didn't you work for him for from age 16 to 20?
Yeah, sure did. We actually, my brother Ken got me a job at Montgomery Ward selling shoes during the summer. Okay, and I'm 16 years old, just got a driver's license. And I used to go by the office to pick up the tickets on a Friday. I'm there talking to the ladies at the front desk, and I'm telling them about how horrible this shoe job is because it's just not what I want to do. I'm 16, and I hate people, and I hate the ladies coming in there. Oh, my God, it's miserable. So I'm laughing with them about it, and Paul had walked out of his office, and he says, well, that job will probably give you enough stories for a lifetime. And then he said, how would you like to work here? Now, they had just moved to a new office from 1919 Caroline at the corner of Pierce to 2020 Central Center at Gray to 1919 Caroline. And I helped him move from one office to another. But then he says, how would you like to work here for the summer? And I went, well, yeah, that'd be great. He paid me $75 a week. But I mean, again, I'm 16. I'm living.
Dude, that's good money.
You ain't kidding. And became his assistant on Friday night because Gino had just started working at that time too. I think this was 76. Yeah, going on 77. And Gino was doing some of that stuff. And I told Paul if there ever came anything available, I'd like to be a second. I'd like to be a referee. And I got to do that too. I got to be a second, walk the guys to the ring. Didn't let me in the dressing room right away. I had just put the jacket on the chair outside. But I was around the guys. And finally, when Paul offered me the job, then I started going in every morning, and I always brought gear, man. I always brought workout gear just in case. And that case came up when a football player wanted to learn how to wrestle. And the Iron Sheik was in the territory at that time, and Gary Hart used to come down with Bronco every Friday morning, go over the match with Paul. Then he'd go have lunch, go to the show that night. This football player wanted to learn how to wrestle. And Gary brought the Iron Sheik with him. His wrestler was Muhammad Farouk back then.
Yep.
So Paul said, you can go with him if you want. Take him to the Coliseum. You can work out with him if you want. So, oh, man, this is great. So we went down to the Coliseum, and finally I get to go in the dressing room with Sam Houston Coliseum, and I'm going to get dressed to train with Muhammad Farouk. He's a real wrestler. He's from Iran, and he's an amateur wrestler. He's been on the Olympic team in Iran. And he don't take kindly to people thinking it's easy. And so I was a young buck, and hell, I thought I knew this stuff, and I'm working for the promoter, so I pretty much was in, man. And this football player, I don't think he had a clue either. So we went to the ring, and Cosgrove made us squat a little bit and do some push-ups. He says, "Okay, now you're going to turn me over." And he got down in the all-four stance, and I'm about $165, man. Are you kidding me? So I go to turn him over, and he just turtles on me. He didn't have to even do that, but he did. He just laid flat, and I couldn't do anything with him. He's about 245 at this time, too, and he's just rock hard.
Yeah.
A football player tried the same thing. So anyway, after both of us failed miserably, he goes, "Okay, now my turn." Says, "Get down all fours." So to this day, I don't know what kind of hold he had me, as if he was bending my neck back and stretching me. He says, "Now, scream." I said, "Okay." He goes, "No, louder, scream." I said, okay. And then he kind of pushed me aside like "Get out of here, you puss." And then he did the same thing to the football player. And then he wanted us to wrestle each other, and we did for a little bit, but neither one of us knew what we were doing. Yeah, and that was one Friday. The next Friday, the guy came one more time, and he was sore, and Cosgrove. Well, actually, the first time I forgot about this, when I locked up with Kai, I hit him in the left ear with the right ear. You're supposed to lock up collar and elbow. Well, I went ear and elbow. He slapped me right back and told me how stupid I was. That was part of working with Paul. But anyway, the next week we came back, and this guy, that was his last trip back there. I think we went back to the Coliseum, maybe twice. Alone like that. So
how long did you work with the Iron Sheik, who was working under a different name? Did you just keep training with him for months and months at a time, or did other guys jump in and help you train?
It was about a month, man, because he realized the football player wasn't coming back, and I don't believe they had any clue that I had a chance to get in this business, because they kept telling me, no. And Paul kept saying to me, "No, you don't want to do this." I said, "No, I really do want to do this." So.
Why did he say, "No, you don't want to do this"? Because you was $165?
Well, you know what? He actually wrote a story about that in the San Antonio program, about how he was wrong, because he really did. One thing I've learned, not only in this business, but just in life, you can't listen to what people say. You can't. Paul was always discouraging him, I think, because he knew what kind of business it was maybe at that time, and maybe it wasn't a whole lot of money. I wasn't a big guy. That's where the business was at. Big men. You had smaller guys, but, you had to fight and claw to get in. And I don't think he was ready to smarten anybody up either. I kind of got smart by osmosis, being around the office and not acting like a complete idiot or mark. I think he was just... I don't know if he was trying to save me from it, because that's what a lot of people told me too later on after I started wrestling. I said, "Well, we just didn't want you to be disappointed." I thought, you had no idea. You really had no idea. So you have to have confidence in yourself, and you have to believe in yourself, and I did. And once I got in the business, it was like, wow, that was the accomplishment to me. It wasn't. I never anticipated going to Madison Square Garden. I never anticipated going anywhere else. Except where I could go. And in fact, the last run that we had in Tennessee, before you left for Charlotte, I was going to be content to just end my career there and do what I could do wherever until, fate had other plans. So I don't know why Paul discouraged it as much as I think he just didn't know how to encourage me, because I don't think he saw me as a money-making guy.
What did you learn from that guy just from the 4 years you spent just working there, in summers or whatever? Because he wasn't smarting you up about the business, but obviously he was a very smart, successful guy.
Very smart, successful. And he always said every time the bills came in, he paid the bills first and always made sure those were taken care of. And that was the first thing he always said about the mail. So I want the mail when it gets here on my desk. And no problem. I didn't see Paul negotiate with too many people because I think he was a lot more fair than. No, he was. He was more fair than most promoters, and I learned that the way he treated everyone who came in that office as somebody special. He was a celebrity in town. He was an intimidating guy, especially for a kid like me who watched him on TV. And now all of a sudden, I'm driving him to his meetings. I'm dropping him off places he needs to go and walking with him around downtown. He could have been a very different person to his fan base and to his paying customers, but he realized how important they were, and he took care of them. And I got that from him. I mean, that was something that meant everything to him because without them, he wasn't going to be successful. So I learned that you need to take care of the people who are going to take care of you.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
Man, you brought up Gino Hernandez's name a while ago, and he was hot in the Houston area. Came down to Dallas, he was hot there, and then he, whatever happened, he's no longer with us. Was Paul Boesch his father?
It's funny you should ask that because they're doing, and it's supposed to come out either now or soon. Vice, I think, is doing a documentary on Gino. And the speculation has been all these years that Paul and Gino's mom, who was a beautiful lady, had an affair or whatever. And come to find out, I heard that these Vice network people asked Gino's mother, they interviewed her about his death. They're doing a show about Gino. And asked her point blank, was Paul Gino's father? And she just laughed. She had letters from Gino's real dad when he died, and she showed him that. And she said people confused her and Valerie, his wife, all the time because Valerie had red hair, and they did look similar. So they just thought that they were doing the same, and she rebuffed that. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there was a time. There's no reason for her to not tell now. Everybody's gone, but she didn't. So, I mean, I used to think that, and then again, only Paul and her know.
Was Gino already a known entity at that time? Because, I mean, when was it then? Shit, I got my notes here, but when did you head to Los Angeles? It was 79 to 86. You was up there working for Gene and Mike LaBelle. So did you start in Houston and work a little bit there, or was L.A. your first promotion?
No, I started in Houston, actually. I had my first match in Bryan, Texas. It was October 20th, 1979. And then the next week, Boyd Pierce used to be the ring announcer in Houston. He used to also announce for Bill Watts in Shreveport on TV. And the next week, or the week after I had my match, Boyd asked me if I'd be interested in doing some TV work in Shreveport, Louisiana, Oklahoma for Leroy McGurk, and Arkansas. Months from October, December, I had my last shot in Houston. In January, flew to Fresno. I started working for.
You formed a tag team up there with Chris Adams, correct?
Yes.
Was this before he was a gentleman?
Well, he was a gentleman there too. He was a gentleman, Chris Adams, there, and he had just, I think, come to the States. I think that might have been his first territory.
Dude, what was the LA scene like back then as far as wrestling? Because you guys working in the Olympic Auditorium a lot?
Yes. It was I was supposed to go to Portland, but it was Gary Hart worked the LA thing out, and Chavo Guerrero was the booker. The wrestling had been down so many years. For a 20-year-old kid from Texas to go to Los Angeles, California, meet Dr. Jerry Graham my first night in, and Dory and Terry Funk were making regular shots there to try and help the territory, but it was just so dead. I mean, it really was dead. But I got to become good friends with the Guerreros. Chris, Al Madrill was there, and Al was 30 years old and just miserable, man. Just a miserable guy the whole time. But the wrestling scene, we were wrestling maybe 3 nights, sometimes 4 nights a week, whereas if I went to Portland, I would have gone 7 nights a week, and I'd kick myself in the butt for not doing that year. But I was having a great time. I was in the big city, and I'd go down to Hollywood Boulevard. It was just freaks and geeks.
Man, where were you living in Los Angeles? Because, I mean, it's high now. I'm sure it was high back then as well. I mean, promotion's down. I don't imagine the money's just rolling in, but you're working. You've got, the territory may be down, but man, y'all had a lot of big stars over there, a lot of great talent. Where did you live?
Yeah.
I mean, and how did you adapt to the West Coast lifestyle? When you come out of West Texas, then go to Houston, then haul ass out there to L.A., a little bit different taste.
It's a different taste. I don't know if it's still there, but I'll bet it is. It's called the Milner Hotel on 8th and Flower Street by the Figueroa. And there was a restaurant there called the Fig where everybody went after the matches. But I stayed in the Milner Hotel when I first got there. And then Bob Bockwinkel, Nick's brother, his younger brother, had a place in Van Nuys. And he had built a duplex behind it. He rented that to me, while I was there. So I stayed in Van Nuys for most of my time there. It was a nice little place for me. Again, 20 years old, living life the way I wanted to live it, and not bad.
You stayed there for about 4 years, and dude, you end up in Continental. Well, so if you leave L.A., if you're working on the West Coast, and then you go down, where were you living when you went to Continental?
Well, I mean, after Los Angeles, I went to I came back to Texas for a little bit, and then I went to Atlanta, and then I think after Atlanta, I had to stay in Memphis and went to Continental. I was living in Gulf Breeze, which is right outside of Pensacola, in Continental when I first got there, and then we moved up to Birmingham. And that's a territory nobody really likes or likes to talk about. Well, I won't say nobody, but you weren't going to get rich, but you were going to be on the beach. You had the Armstrongs, you had the Fullers, Jimmy Goldham's. There was a lot of Southern guys there that just you didn't have to leave till 3 p.m. You could go to the gym, go to the beach, do whatever you wanted, as long as you were there an hour ahead of time. That. Again, in a business sense, you weren't going to make a whole lot of money, but you're going to have a whole lot of fun.
What was the difference in work style between working in Los Angeles and going down to Continental and then USWA? Because the Tennessee stuff, I mean, I don't know how to even phrase it. How would you phrase it, the USWA work style back in the day?
Borderline wrestling, hokey.
But I think when I say hokey, I mean it with respect.
Me too. Me too. I mean,
but definitely hokey.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you would have a typical wrestling card. I'm not saying that's bad because that was what it was back then. And you have to admit, did you ever see any of the classic Lawler-Dundee matches?
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? Man, those are some of my favorites.
Right. So, I mean, they would actually put that kind of stuff on. So, but at the same time, they would have Dr. Frankenstein or Leatherface or something like that. And it would be, sometimes it could be a little hokey. So, and I mean that with respect too. Because I had a great time. I did have a good time in USWA. It's one of those things too where it was a double-edged sword for a lot of reasons, a lot of fronts. So, dude,
you're a student of the game. You can work any kind of style. I mean, you're a pro wrestler's pro wrestler. Out of all the territories that you worked, whether it was down in Houston, California, Continental, USWA, so some NWA or WCW, WWF. Where did you enjoy your stay the most, or did the style of work, or just the lifestyle that went along with it, just that gypsy life that is the life of a pro wrestler?
Well, I got to tell you, probably my favorite. There's two of them. Portland, number one, because Portland was just right up in the Northwest and kind of tucked away. And it was one of those territories where you stayed at one of those places where all the guys stayed at, and it was that lifestyle. And I had some good friends working there at that time too. But probably the number one favorite would have to be Continental because the Armstrongs, Brad was the one who called me to bring me in, and Brad had the idea. And just being around, I had a condo in Gulf Breeze, and Brad had one right next door. So we got to hang out in kayfabe, over there. And that was just a cool vibe and a cool place to hang out because no pressure. At that time in my life, that's kind of what I was looking for, man. It's just to be somewhere where I can belong and live that lifestyle because that's what attracted me.
Did you have anybody that really influenced your style of work, or what would you end up starting with, the finished product, or like maybe when I met you in 1990, just to me, I mean, just straight up badass worker. Because when I think of, the Iron Sheik teaching you, I'm thinking, okay, here's this shooter, dangerous, stretch you. But, when he worked, he was a gimmick guy, and it was just a different kind of match. So just along the way, as you being such a fan of the business, was there anybody that you kind of said, okay, I like this and I'm kind of basing my style off of them? Or, for me, for many years, I tried to be Ric Flair. I was a big failure at being Ric Flair, but he was an inspiration early on in my career, and then I found the brawling style, which lended itself to me. And I was trying to be, in USWA when I met you. Hell, I was just trying to learn the ropes. But just a veteran like yourself, who were some of the factors, or was there anybody that influenced you?
Yeah, Terry Funk. The Funks, all of them were great workers, but Terry just stood out because he was so unorthodox and just so out of the ordinary. And later on, watching a guy like Valentine, I could appreciate his work. Back then, I wasn't sure what he was doing, but then later on, when I really got to watch it and talk to him a little bit, I got it even more. He was one of those guys who loved the lifestyle and just loved to get hit and get in the ring. And some of those guys were like that. Some of the guys just like to get in there and just knock the hell out of each other. But Terry Funk told a story even when there wasn't one to tell. He made it. He made everything he did mean something, and that just, he worked even when he wasn't on camera. He was working the whole time, and he was having fun. And that was another thing, man, when I used to watch him, once I got in the business and he'd be on the card, I'd watch him in the dressing room. He's messing with everybody, and just having fun. A lot of those West Texas guys really, really influenced me. Murdoch was another one.
God dang, Murdoch was such a good worker. When you talk about your heavy Terry Funk influence, obviously I'm a big, huge Terry Funk fan, but, Dory Jr. was one of those guys where back, when I was younger in the business, I was like, man, I don't really get this guy. It's kind of slow. He worked real tight, no gaps, no nothing. Once I gained experience in the business, I was like, man, this freaking Dory Funk Jr. is really, really good. But
Yeah.
When I first started, I did not understand it, Tom.
Right. Well, I'd watched him since, again, when he was young, so I got to see him in his 20s. But all three of the Funks were pretty good, even Dory Sr. in their day. But yeah, Junior, I got to say that he was one of the top. When they talk about the NWA champion, Flair, modern day, and Race, and those are your NWA champions that pretty much define what the world champion was in that era, man. And in that era, it was still treated as a contest, and they're putting it on and saying, hey, this is a contest. And people will say, well, them first matches ain't real, but when they fight for that world championship, and I thought, yeah, okay, I get it. And then I'd watch the match, and it was great. That was my big influence.
How long did it take you to develop a promo?
Ooh, you know what? I started out, I think, okay, but then after a while, I didn't know anymore. And then I started, people said I copied Piper a lot, and maybe I did. Maybe it was that influence of Roddy, because it was just more of a natural thing, because Roddy was such a great guy. To hear him and then to watch him, you're not sure, but then you meet him, and he was such a great guy. And I think it was when I got a chance to talk as a heel, it came a little more natural, because that's the guy I admired as a heel, was Roddy. He wasn't a big guy always, but you believed him when he went to the ring, when he said something. So I think it took me a while. It took me a good 5-6 years before I could really think I could talk.
Did you prefer working heel or baby?
Heel.
Why?
Tell you why. Some things that happen in your life, and I always tell kids this. I ask them, why are you a heel? Why are you a babyface? Are you just playing? Did you have a good home life? Was your mom and dad together? Did they buy you a car when you were 16? And you're out there playing bad guy. Why? But, some people might have lived in a broken home or abuse or just have things that happen in their life, and you draw from that. And, then you have something to be mad about. So there were things in my life, not that I was abused or anything like that, but there were things in my life that took a left turn, and I would go to the ring like that every night. And Bill Watts was the guy. He's a guy I got a lot of respect for and wish I would have got to know him a lot better. But he was the guy who came to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about being a heel? And I looked at him and said, every day. He says, yeah, you got an attitude, so we're going to turn you heel. So he did that, and it felt a little more natural. I don't know. I just felt more natural because smiling and doing all that stuff, I wasn't feeling at that time, man. And I'm sure you knew too. I never got real close to a lot of people, and that was just it. And people weren't always sure what to think of me. And then all of a sudden I'm going, well, that's good because I don't want you to know what to think of me. And then it kind of backfires because you wind up with no friends. That was my persona. I just didn't trust a lot of people just due to a lot of things that happened to fall my way. And I'm going out there and not having a smile or not having a kiss babies and whatever, it was great. It was because you can kind of let loose, I thought.
But so then, if you didn't let people get close to you, then was going to the ring and being in the ring kind of therapeutic for you and being a heel?
Of course, I think just going to the ring, that was the only place. And you've heard this before. People say that's where you really feel comfortable. You go there, but then, you get out of your element. It's hard to, it's hard to, I guess, relate. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but it was hard for me to, there were some people that kind of got it and got me, but those who did, and those who didn't, but it was better in the ring. It was better going to the show, with people I liked, and not everybody liked me. I get that. I wasn't always the guy that you wanted to ride with, but I, when I would go to a show with a cool person, somebody who got it and understood that life's not so serious. Let's have a good time. It was cool.
Man, I remember when I first came up there to Tennessee. I started working in Dallas, and I want to tell my story for my fan base. 5 years into the podcast, I've told the story a million times, but you were directly in this story. So I'm starting off in Dallas. I got 5 months of training, 1 day a week, 25 people, 1 ring, 2 instructors, not a lot of reps. I'm green as grass. The heels come into Dallas on Friday nights, Saturday mornings, beat the trash out of me because I'm a white meat baby face, get some heat. I'm just paying my dues. All of a sudden, Jerry Jarrett buys the territory, the Dallas end from Fritz Von Erich, and all of a sudden, it's based out of Tennessee. The loop, and then you got the Dallas shot. So I'm working on a freight dock. I buy a 1988 Hyundai Excel. I tell Jerry Jarrett, man, when do you think I can start working full time? He says, hell, Steve, I think you're ready now. Well, as we know, I wasn't really ready. But nonetheless, when the man gives you a job, I quit Watkins Motor Lines, and there I was on my way to the Mid-South Coliseum. Dutch Mantell was booking. He didn't know I was going to show up. We come up with the Steve Austin name, or he did. He would later come up with the stunning Steve Austin name. And what do you do when you're a new guy in the territory? Well, you got to find a place to live. So someone had smartened me up about this shithole on Dickerson Pike called the Congress Inn. And way back in the day, and I don't know if you got there by this time, but a guy named, a couple, Shane and Sonny Hall, were the people that were running the Congress Inn back in the day. Out of all the things I've forgotten in my career, I remember those 2 people. Sometimes I'd be sick as a dog with the flu. I was making either $15 or $20 a night, working all those shots, and I couldn't pay my rent on time, and they would just let me pay whenever I had the money. And I was riding with Dutch Mantell and Chris Champion. We were riding in my car, and things were great. We'd stop at McDonald's. They'd go buy a hamburger, and I'd sit in the car, or we'd go through the drive-thru, but I wouldn't eat shit until we got back because I didn't have no money. Well, it comes down, and I guess you'd already been into territory, Tom, but you moved into the Congress Inn as well. And as I was in about the middle of the building on that main wing, you were down there in the corner, kind of parallel with the office, and we were probably 6 or 8 rooms apart. We were on the same squad, USWA travel team. I'll make it sound like a professional sports team here.
Yes, sir.
But, I was a new guy in the territory. You were an established vet. You were doing your thing. You had that big-ass cut on your head. You was helping draw the houses. The territory wasn't in the greatest shape at the time when I got there. And, like I said, I wasn't making shit. And you can jump in here now that I've kind of laid out the story, but I just remember at the time, I guess Dutch and Chris had started doing something else. I was still driving my Hyundai. And I guess dirty white boy Tony Anthony, who's a hell of a hand, had gone to Puerto Rico or something, and you were driving his 1978 Toyota Tercel. I guess it was brown.
Shit brown, yes.
Shit brown.
Yes,
it was shit brown, but and the Tercel is a great car.
Sure it is.
But anyway, it broke down, and so someone approaches me. I don't know if it was Dutch or was you, or someone said, hey, man, white boy's car broke down. Tom's out of a ride. You think you and Tom can start riding to the towns together? was that you that posed that question, or was that Dutch Mantell? Because you and I just didn't decide to hook up and start riding together because we liked each other.
I think that must have been Dutch, because I don't know that I would.
I think it was.
I don't think that I would want to impose myself on anybody just because I knew that I could go off on a tangent. And if you didn't know that I was working just to work and just having fun, then that could be kind of a bad ride, because not everybody knew how to take me. And sometimes I would be in that mood, wouldn't have anything to change it. And I could just be like that. So that was probably Dutch for a couple reasons, maybe to help me out as well as you. And I don't know why he would try to torture you like that or not, because Dutch knew I was out there. Dutch knew I liked to have fun, but I mean, nobody ever. Brad Armstrong was the only guy who knew I was working from day one, man. Got it. And that's why, we went through a lot of similar stuff and in and out of the business, and that's why I can have that bond with him. But you were different, especially that day that we took White Boy's car. I mean, I think we drove through McDonald's or something like that and couldn't stop laughing enough to order. So, yeah.
But I remember on the first few rides. Yeah, because I remember you were telling a story about on Great North Wrestling, the time we were riding down the road. I guess I'd probably been there a couple of weeks. This was after we bonded to a degree. And yeah, we were riding down the road and we're like, I'm the greenhorn, you're the vet. And like, yeah, man, we're effing pro wrestlers. We're like a couple of rock stars. So we're driving a shit brown 78 Toyota Tercel. And I'm starving to death.
Yeah, no air conditioning. Couldn't afford a hamburger. You have a dip, a skull in your mouth. Your hair is blown wild. That's what I looked at you. Yeah, and a beautiful girl drove by too. I think in a car.
I remember that.
Yeah. Big pro wrestlers.
And she kind of looked at us like these two bags of shit in this shit brown Toyota Tercel.
You had your shirt off. I think you had some dribble coming down your lip. And she just kind of looked at her and smiled. She's thinking, "Oh my God."
Dude, on one of those first trips, I think we were going to Memphis or somewhere. It was a pretty good drive. It's 205 miles from where we was at on the Congress end. And we took off, and I think I forgot some at the hotel, and I actually had to go back. And you were in the car with me. But, dude, the first few times we rode together, it was complete silence.
I think it's because you had the music up loud.
It might have been before I turned the music on, because I would have been respectful enough to ask you, hey, man, if you want to listen to some music.
Right.
But, those first few trips are a little awkward. And then whatever happened, I mean, then we kind of started to understand each other. But it was a feeling out process, and it was a little bit awkward to begin with, because I was green as grass. I wanted to ask a million questions, but then you was kind of like you were in your own world doing your own thing, and I'm like, man, I don't want to intrude on this guy or ask him a million stupid questions. There's a lot I'd like to know, but he doesn't seem like he wants to talk to me.
Well, that's not it. See, that's not it. That wasn't it at all. That's what I'm saying. That's where I get very misunderstood. But I remember a time at the gym, and this kind of enters my mind on occasion too, because and I don't know why I did it, but we were working out together, and one time you said, man, I want to do some rear delts. And I looked at you just ribbing. I said, yeah, you look like your rear delts really need work, which, you were, again, 265 and you look pretty like a damn brick shithouse in. And you looked at me and said, well, look at your delts or rear delts. I went, oh, hey, man, I was just ribbing. And then I would take off the weights and I would rack them back, even though we had 2 more sets to do. He says, why do you keep racking the weights? I thought, well, I don't know, man. I just thought to get them out of the way. But, there were little irritant things I would do, just to not even realize that they would irritate anybody else. But that was part of my, I had my pre-workout routine and my pre-workout powder too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, that was, the congressman demanded that. So
you were in a different mood when we got to the gym than I was.
I sure was. And then that was why I went to the gym back then. So, it was because there was a time when I didn't. But that was a business end. That's not the way it is today.
Yeah, I would get to that stage of the business as well later on in the business. Chris Champion was like Nostradamus when he called it. We were driving down the road one day. He goes, brother, he named these 3 things. And I said, no. He goes, and in a year you'll be doing all 3. A year later, I was doing all 3.
All 3, yeah.
And then some.
And then some. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I look back at my formative years and, because I've heard Dutch and, I love Dutch to death and he was so helpful to me. But, he, like he says, I mean, I guess when I came in, I think I was very intimidated because, man, you got just a lot of guys on that roster that have been in the business 10 to 15 years. I come out there, I've got 2 months in the business. I'm a greenhorn. And so it's an intimidating process, but you got to stand your ground. And I just got finished playing college football. So on one hand, now, dude, I was lucky to have a scholarship at a Division II school, okay? But the fact of the matter was, I was a little bit on the jack side, so I was thinking, hey, man, I'm just a pro wrestler, But in that locker room, I was like, hell, I ain't nobody. I'll never forget I asked, who was that guy, Kenny Wayne, or that wasn't Kenny Wayne? Yeah. I don't know, dude. I had a cassette tape with Van Halen Unchained on it because I needed some entrance music. Everybody that went out had entrance music. And then so I'm thinking to myself, okay, I can't work. I look okay. I've got long blonde hair. After I started eating potatoes, and I started losing weight and stopped doing push-ups. But I remember going up to one of those guys who used to play the music, and I said, hey, man, when I go out, could you play this song for me? And he looked at me, and he cussed me up and down. He goes, man, we got guys working here 10 years. He goes, you've been working here a couple of months, and you want some music? He was lucky enough. I was lucky enough that he played the music for me. But as intimidating as the process was, I guess, like in asking you about the weights or some of the things that I told Dutch, I don't know, maybe I was a handful myself as far as I wasn't an asshole. Well, I think I was an asshole to some people, but I guess it was in my quest to try to learn the business, but I wasn't going to get left on the back burner. You know what I mean?
Right. But here's I think everybody's impression, especially when you first started, there's potential there. There's potential there. And I think especially at that time, it was a different era. You got to think, man, now, especially after all these years and what you've done, thinking about where you came from, because that's one thing you never forgot, I think, is you remember what it was like being a young guy. You remember what it's like being in all those guys. So now, after all you've accomplished, think about it. You're part of the pop culture of that time. So to realize that, from eating potatoes in the Congress Center in Nashville, Tennessee, to living in Los Angeles, and wherever you're living now, being able to go mule deer hunting whenever you want to do, pretty much being able to do whatever you want to do, whether it's in business or whatever. Now you know how important it is to be respectful and cordial to the young guys coming up, because they will be in awe, and you know what it's like to be that scared. So I think seeing you, we didn't see you scared. I didn't see you scared at all. I was an equal opportunity offender, I guess, man. I wasn't trying to mess with anybody. I just, you know what I mean? It wasn't anything intentional. I don't think you're an asshole at all that time. I just think it was you trying to be you and then trying to find you. It was like, we saw Stunning Steve Austin. Then when you went to Atlanta, everybody saw a different side of Steve Austin. And then finally when you came to New York and WWF, then we saw that different side, which, you found out too, and everybody either does or doesn't. That it's up to you to make that change or make the right decision. And, everybody knew you had something.
Yeah, but you know what? It was an intimidating process, because you're with guys that go out there and work their asses off. Man, we had some great hands on that crew. You know that. And I was learning from, and most of them were giving me 411. You were. And, I guess the biggest thing was it was nerve-wracking being in front of people trying to do the job that you wanted to do since you were a kid. And I'll never forget one of the first matches that I had up there after I debuted at the Mid-South Coliseum. We was working, I guess it was Lebanon, Tennessee. And, Dutch said, hell, I was working with one of was it Eddie Gilbert's father? Dude worked under a hood.
Tommy. Yeah.
Tommy. Anyway, he says, hey, man, go out there with Tommy and go about 8 minutes. And of course, I can't remember who went over, but all of a sudden, Tommy giving us these instructions to go have this match, and I'm sitting there thinking, as he's talking, I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to do for 8 minutes?
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. What am I going to do with 8 minutes? That's the fear. Like now, once you get your chops up, dude, you could warm up and walk around in a circle for 8 minutes.
Right. But, there again, you can tell about experience, but you can't teach experience. And the only way you're going to learn that is by getting in the ring and feeling it. And this is a feeling business. I mean, you can talk about it all day long and you can go over moves all day long, but it's what you do in between the moves. So like you said, you can walk and talk for 8 minutes, but it's how you walk and talk and what you say during those 8 minutes, all the mannerisms. It's the it factor. And some people get it and some people don't. But I mean, and that is what separates guys like you or Rock, from guys like me or Zach Ryder, which I don't mean any disrespect to Zach at all. I'm just saying there's a reason that people are attracted to that. And that's the nerve-wracking process that every performer, I think, goes through. Even the kids today, they just go through it a different way. But back then, you had guys who didn't want young guys in the business. You had guys who were fighting for spots. You had guys who... Yeah, you were a threat to everybody because you did look good, because you were an athlete. You had played college ball. I mean, so everybody knew your credentials, and then they were going to say, well, you're 6'2", 260, man, and just looked capable and looked the part. And at that time, there were some guys going to the gym and some guys weren't. It wasn't really, especially in Tennessee. Are you kidding me? It wasn't predominant. So, Christ Almighty. I mean, it's going to be intimidating because you got Jerry Lawler there too, because he had already been around, big star, and but then you find out they're not any different. They all had the same dreams and hopes, and hopefully you get some of the guys who will figure that out and help you out.
All right, let's give a shout out to my man Diamond Dallas Page and DDP Yoga. Hey, I've been doing my regular workouts with the DDP Yoga Now app for months, and man, I'm feeling the difference, folks. I'm feeling the big difference. More limber, more loose than ever before, and I feel great. Have you been looking to get on board with DDP Yoga? Well, there ain't no excuse not to, because Dallas is giving you 7 days free to try it out. Now listen to me. That is a week, 7 days to try out the program. Explore the app and own your life, and it's completely free. All you got to do is commit. DDP Yoga can work for all ages, all weights, all fitness levels. It's a kick-ass cardio workout that will dramatically increase your flexibility and strengthen your core like never before, and this is all done with minimal joint impact. Just for listeners of the Steve Austin Show, you can save 20% off all DVDs and annual memberships for the DDP Yoga Now app. Go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to get started, and check this out. DDP's upcoming book, Positively Unstoppable, The Art of Owning It, is now available for pre-order. Filled with lessons from Page's life that share his own struggle to find his calling, overcoming one obstacle after another, Positively Unstoppable is a Bible for anyone who needs to be re-inspired to follow their dreams and take real action towards the things that matter most to them. Positively Unstoppable will be released January 15th, 2019, and is available for pre-order anywhere books are sold. All right, everybody, let's hit the pause button as far as this conversation goes right here, right now. Thursday, the podcast will be a continuation of my conversation with Dr. Tom Prichard as we get into some more stories from the road, stories and knowledge about the business, and getting into the Wrestling Academy starting up down there in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you're interested in getting into a career inside the squared circle, I couldn't recommend a better place than this one. The open house is going to be at D1 Sports in Knoxville, January 3rd at 7 p.m. The first class will actually be on January 7th. All information that you need is going to be on this website, jpwrestlingacademy.com. jpwrestlingacademy.com. This is going to be an awesome camp, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. If you're trying to learn the business, repetition, consistency, and obviously commitment is key. Man, when I got to the USWA and we were working at least 6 days a week, I picked up the business faster than any other place I'd ever been because I had some great guys to ask questions. We worked every single night of the week, damn near, and you had to change your matchup every single night because a lot of marks would follow that tour around. So you were forced to always elevate your game, always be thinking, always be creative. But as Tom will say, next week, it's all about fundamentals. It's all about the mechanics and then where you take it from there. But anyway, they're giving me the go-home cue. Catch up, part 2 of my Conversation with Dr. Tom Prichard this Thursday. Hey, man, if you guys are thirsty, I got a badass IPA for you. It's called Steve Austin Broken Skull IPA from El Segundo Brewing Company. Yes, I will still drink my own beer. More on that note on Thursday. You can find Broken Skull IPA at Whole Foods and Total Wines if you live in Cali. If you ain't in Cali, you might be shit out of luck. If you're looking to get a badass pocket knife, I got two for you. Cold Steel Broken Skull knife and a new working man knife. Get them at my new Amazon store. Amazon has the best price on both knives. Just go to amazon.com/shop/Steve Austin or go directly to the Cold Steel Knives website and check out all of their badass knives. If you need more info on my sponsors, check out the show description to this episode for details. Until then, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
Just when you thought summer couldn't get any hotter, Pluto TV is turning up the heat with thousands of free movies. Presenting Summer of Cinema. Stream your favorite blockbuster films like Gladiator,
I will have my vengeance.
Good Burger,
This is what I call fast food.
Beverly Hills Cop, The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, and Julie and Julia.
Bon appetit.
All for free on your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.